Okay guys, so today I want to talk about the Dark Magician of Destruction tech. This is one of the strongest tech cards I've seen in Yu-Gi-Oh! In a very long time and will dramatically increase the resilience of any strategy that can play it, as well as give you basically a free boss monster. So I want to go over what this card does, why it's so strong, and show you some basic combos to give you an idea of how you can achieve this and why it makes your game plan so resilient to interactions. Okay, so this is a level 8 Dark Spellcaster, Dark Magician of Destruction. It can either be fusion summoned, which we will not be doing, or special summoned from your extra deck by banishing a level 6 or higher Dark Spellcaster monster you control during the turn a spell card or effect was activated. Now we can do this very easily because of Black Witch or Wanted, and we have a little bit over half of our hands we're going to draw one of these cards, so it will be like a pretty consistent thing that we have access to this, or we can search it later in our combo. But ideally you would want to start with it to gain protection for the rest of your engine. So it's very easy for us to summon this in any deck that plays something like the Black Witch or Wanted engine, or just has access to a Dark level 6 or higher spellcaster through any other reason. However, this also says if this card is special summoned, you can add one Dark Magician or one card that mentions it from your deck to your hand. And this card's name becomes Dark Magician while on the field or in the graveyard. Now, there are lots of different cheesy things you can do in terms of what you can search and what you can fuse into, and let me know in the comments if there are things that I have missed or things that you think may be better or better situationally. But for the sake of this video, I'm going to be talking about the Gaze of Timaeus and using this to summon Dark Dragoon. So this is a quick play spell card that can be searched off of Dark Magician of Destruction, and this says, target a Dark Magician or Dark Magician girl you control or in your graveyard, fusion summon one fusion monster from your extra deck that mentions it as material by shuffling that monster into the deck, but banish it during the end phase of the next turn. So this card mentions Dark Magician, and this card counts as Dark Magician while on the field or in the graveyard. So let me go to some combos and show you the basic idea here, starting with the absolute most fundamental way that you can make this play, and then I'll show you some more complex combos. So let's say that we start with Black Witch and any of our blanks. So these are just all blanks in our hand, and we have the Black Witch or any other way to get a level 6 or higher Dark Spellcaster. So we're going to pitch a blank to summon the Black Witch, and trigger Black Witch's effect on summon to set a Sinful Spoils card. Now we can activate this card, this Deception, and because we have now activated a spell card, we can special summon the Dark Magician from the extra deck. So we banish the Black Witch because we have a level 6 or higher Dark Spellcaster, and we've activated a spell card this turn. So we can banish this, summon Dark Magician of Destruction, and on his special summon, trigger it to search for a card that mentions Dark Magician. So we're going to be searching for the Gaze of Timaeus. Now, the basic idea here is if you were going for the Deception route, you probably are just going to tribute this body anyhow and get the Hallowed Azamina for free. And you can do whatever you want after this. So you had a bunch of other blanks in your hand. You can activate the Gaze of Timaeus. And remember, this doesn't have to be on field. It can be on field or in graveyard. And you shuffle it back to summon your Dragoon or whatever your other target was. So before you have used any of your engine at all, the only thing you have resolved is Black Witch, and you have activated Deception. You haven't even used the effect yet. You now have an Omni Negate on field, and you can continue in this case with whatever Hallowed plays you wanted to make. So if you wanted to go for your second Omni Negate immediately, you could make your Ilia Sylvia, but typically you'd be making a Murcielago to go for a combo, or rather like a resource loop, and then you would make your Ilia Sylvia later. So this is the very bare minimum thing that this does, and now let me show you a couple of other combos. I think there's some different ways that you can think about playing White Forest or other decks with this tech because you get the protection so early on. So for example, let's say that we've only opened access to one starter, but in a vacuum, it's a very, very strong starter that basically gives us everything. We obviously don't want to lead with this because we have access to an Omni Negate. So we're going to summon the Witch. We're going to Witch set Deception, we're going to activate Deception, and now we meet the requirements for Dark Magician of Destruction, so we will banish the Witch to summon it, and then on summon, use the trigger effect to search for the Gaze of Timaeus. So now we can tribute this Dark Magician of Destruction to search for a Hallowed Azamina. And by the way, if this isn't obvious to you, this is a huge amount of pressure already because this card is going to allow us to fuse into either another Omni Negate or some very strong resource card like the Murcielago, and then an Omni Negate later anyhow. And we haven't even summoned the Dragoon yet. So just tributing this as basically a free material gives us the Hallowed Azamina. Now here we can activate Hallowed, for example, and search or summon our Murcielago. The Murcielago can search something like a Wanted. By the way, this is a quick play fusion, so we can do this at any time. Here we search for the Wanted, I'm going to add back Hallowed by shuffling back the Murcielago from field back into the extra deck and activate this Hallowed to summon the Ilia Sylvia. So I'm going to go Hallowed Chainlink 1, and then I'm going to go Chainlink 2, Seeker of the Sinful Spoils. I'm going to search for the Vengeance here. So I do technically have 2 Sinful Spoils cards. There's the Wanted, and this counts as a Sinful Spoils card. Here I'm going to make the Ilia Sylvia, and just keep this in my hand. You could go into a Saint Azamina or a Morigina if you wanted, because you do have 2 Sinful Spoils cards. But anyhow, we're just going for the Omni Negate first. Now we activate Gaze of Timaeus. Of course you could do this first. You just want to have tributed the body, the Dark Magician body, into the grave to get your Hallowed Search so that you are not wasting resources. You know, you'd rather use the Dark Magician of Destruction from grave than on field, because otherwise you're not being very effective. So, you know, obviously you could do this first. It doesn't really matter. So now we're going to summon the Dragoon. So now we have 2 Omni Negates, and we have not activated a single White Forest card or whatever engine it is that you happen to be playing. So now we can activate Witch of the White Forest, which is this, you know, famously and very controversially will lock you out of summoning dark monsters from the extra deck for the rest of the turn after this card resolves. So we have summoned both of our Omni Negates, and now we're going to search for example, an Esteller. Now, this is a much higher quality search in the context of double Omnis, because if you only had gone for one Omni, like let's say you had the Ilia Sylvia on field, and you summon your Esteller, and your opponent goes, you know, Imperm or whatever in the Esteller, you have to think very carefully about using your only Omni, because if they're baiting you and they have something like a Niblator that you have no protection from, it's going to feel very, very bad when you lose to that interaction later. But now that we have 2 Omnis, we can happily protect our strongest starter with 1 Omni and keep the other Omni for something else later, like a more serious threat. Okay, so now we will summon the Esteller. I'm going to turn the Esteller into a tuner using Witch of the White Forest, because we're going to go for 3 Omni Negates in this play. So now the Esteller can send the Witch of the White Forest to summon the Sylvie. The Sylvie will trigger on summon to search for a Tails. We're going to activate Tails here and search for Elzet. And we're going to Elzet and pitch a blank here to search for the Elzet Azamina. There are lots of ways to do these lines without having any other blanks in hand, and I'll show you an example of that afterwards. But I just want to show you that you can make actually 3 Omni Negates on a White Forest board now, in addition to everything else. So, because the Esteller was made a tuner, we cannot turn her and the Sylvie into the Arciela. We have to use our Elzet. But the thing is that we want to use Estellar's Grave effect, and so we're actually going to make the Herald first before we go into Arciela, and you'll see why this matters in a moment. So we now have 3 Omni Negates on field, and we have not committed any of our Diabell's Star Engine, I mean like the Vengeance and the Diabell's the White Witch. So those 2 cards are still totally usable. Even if we had used all 3 of our Omni Negates for some reason, we could still go into the White Witch and the Vengeance, which is the main point of the White Forest strategy right now. Okay, so now we have Herald on field. We can summon the Elzet Azamina from hand, and now we have a 2 and a 4, and we can turn those into Arciela, and we can pitch another blank, and this will trigger the Esteller in the graveyard, so we can bring that back, and now we will be able to complete the ladder and go into the regular Diabell Queen after searching whatever off of Elzet Azamina. Because we've already gone through our Azamina plays, we're not going to be searching Deception like it normally would in the basic ladder, so this is basically just a blank. Whatever your blank Elzet Azamina search is this card. So now the Diabell Queen can add back whatever. In this case, we can add back a Tails, so we have a good quality material to pitch out of turn. Here we are going to use our White Witch that we've searched in our combo, pitching the blank, which is Morian, which can reset itself. And we're going to use the White Witch to dump the Curse, and Curse is going to dump the, add the Filia. You may be wondering, why would you still be dumping the Curse to get the Filia if you already searched the Vengeance earlier? So this is a very, very important point to keep in mind. There are 2 things here. First of all, when you have Herald on field, this Floodgate also affects you. Any monster sent from the hand or main deck to the graveyard is banished instead. So what you cannot do is you can't like Foolish Burial Goods to dump Curse, Curse add Filia, Filia give you White Witch dump Vengeance, because the Vengeance would be banished instead of being sent to the graveyard, because it will be sent from the hand or deck to the grave. And this will banish monsters sent from the hand or main deck to the grave. So you actually need to summon the Vengeance from hand, and that's why we get access to this earlier, as well as the fact that even if we didn't search this earlier, obviously the Filia could search for the Vengeance now, but we want a blank for the Dragoon to be able to pitch. And so I found that in terms of card economy, searching for or adding back your Tails for Diabell Queen to pitch out of turn and having your Filia as the pitch for the Dragoon just feels pretty good. And now you can summon the Vengeance from hand, and you basically completed your end board. Here you can reset the Morian. And the interesting thing about this type of board is often you'll notice that if you clog your field too much, you don't have a good way to use Vengeance, because you want to use Vengeance not just for the pop but for the special summon effect. And if your field is clogged, you're not going to be able to do that. But when you have 3 Omni Negates, it doesn't really matter to you if you tribute off the Ilya Sylvia or the Herald of the Arclight or both of them to make space for something else, because you have more Omni Negates. So you're not really too pressured into sequencing things in a very particular way, and you can choose to do basically whatever you want. And yes, if they get through 2 Omni Negates, maybe you save your 3rd one for something truly dangerous, and you try to squeeze out everything you can with the Vengeance and the Diabell Queen, and also the Morion that you have set here. So this is kind of like a top tier board that you could create using just a single White Forest starter with the field spell, as long as you have drawn access to the Dark Magician of Destruction package. Okay, I'll show you maybe 1 or 2 other replays just to give you an idea of how much flexibility there is here. So here we've drawn access to Witch, and we've also drawn the Witch of the White Forest. I'm just showing this one because this is the Dark Lock one that everyone complains about, because some people really hate the Dark Lock. I love this card personally. So here we're going to start with Witch, pitching a blank, setting Deception. Now we will activate Deception, so our Dark Magician of Destruction is live. We can banish the Witch, summon Destruction, search for Gaze of Timaeus, and now we contribute the Dark Magician of Destruction to get our Hallowed. And here we can choose what order we want to do it in. We could just go for the Gaze of Timaeus first. Maybe that's the safest thing to do, because you probably want to make Murcielago before Ilya Sylvia anyhow, but you know, you understand. So here we search for Murcielago. We're going to search for the Wanted here. Shuffle back Murcielago. We don't need that on field, and we also may clog our field if we have too many things here, so it's not actually that inefficient to use a monster on field in this particular instance. So we go Hallowed Chainlink 1, Wanted Chainlink 2. Here I'm going to search for the Vengeance. Technically you don't have to, but if you want to make a Saint Azamina or a Mo Regina, you will need the 2nd Sinful Spoils card. And so searching the Vengeance here guarantees that you have the 2nd one on top of the Wanted, but you know, you don't actually need it for the combo, because you could just make the Ilya Sylvia right here. So now that we have summoned the Saint Azamina will be able to summon whatever we want. We can, you know, resolve our Dragoon, bring out our Dragoon whenever, at any point in this combo, probably earliest. Now the Saint can bring out, for example, LZ Azamina. And when we activate our Witch of the White Forest, so here's just like an example of things that you can do, right? You obviously can make the Ilya Sylvia if you want, but here we're going to Witch of the White Forest search for the Esteller, and we're going to use the effect to turn the LZ Azamina into a tuner. So now we have a 2 and a 10, and those can go into any 12. Now the reason I'm showing this here is because this type of board may incentivize players to go for actual Crimson Dragon plays and do, like, you know, Crimson Dragon into Blazar or whatever. And it's very easy to get your first 12 here, when usually you would be making your first 12 off of something else. But really this can be anything, and obviously this can bring out Ilya Sylvia instead. So now we'll be able to get a search off of our Azamina LZ. We've already gone through the Dark Lock, so we're just going to search for a Morion, but of course this can be whatever you want. Now you can summon a Stellar, send the field spell, summon your Sylvie, search for the Tails, go for Arciela, pitch the Tails like we normally would, search for a Valor here because the Esteller is going to come back, so we can complete the ladder even though we've already gone through the Azamina LZ, no problem. Now we activate Tails because this is what we're going to add back when we go into Diabell Queen. We search for our White Witch, which we always want. This is always a part of our combo. So here we can go into the Diabell Queen, add back our Tails. Now we can White Witch, pitch, for example, the Morion, because this will reset itself for free. And then that can dump a Curse. Curse can give us Ophilia, which is going to be our free pitch for the Dragoon. And now we can bring out the Vengeance from the graveyard by banishing a spell and a trap. So I'm not saying that this is the best combo you can do with the deck. I'm just showing you that you have many, many different options for what you want to do, and you can make the Dragoon as early as possible. So last couple thoughts here. This is not a deck profile video, but I will say if you are going to add in the Gaze of Timaeus, which is a brick, you can't afford to continue playing a bunch of other bricks, and I think that we need to focus on cutting down some of the engine requirements or the unnecessary cards in here, and really streamlining what the deck is trying to do. So yeah, you can play Herald if you want. It's easier to go into this because you're going to have earlier protections to go into it, and the Floodgate can be very strong against lots of different types of decks. Dragoon is probably the most generic one that you can make, but there are other targets for it. You don't have to make Dragoon, and there's a lot of flex space in your extra deck. So if you have any suggestions, please let me know. If you want to subscribe, then please do. If you don't, then don't. Okay, thanks for watching.